are interviewing Dr. George Batts in Greeley, Colorado, and the interview is conducted by Karen Larson on April 22nd, 2016. And good afternoon, George.
Good
How are you
afternoon.
doing?
I'm good.
I'm good. I am so thrilled to be a part of this and
It's my honor.
hear your story. So why don't we start at the very beginning? When and where were
Okay.
you born and what
Born
happened
in
there?
Denver, in North Denver, on April 17th, 1944.
All right. And tell us about your parents.
Both of my parents were blue-collar workers, and my mom was a lunchroom manager for 25 years. And my dad, during the war, he hauled coal because we didn't have gas at that time, so everyone in the neighborhood depended on coal. And then after that, for 25 years, he hauled sand and gravel, and both of them, no matter what, I was going to go to college because they didn't get to go because of the Depression and then because of the war. And so it was always their idea that I'd go to college, and I didn't even find out what college was until I was 10, but I knew I was going there. I lived in a time in North Denver when it was still a little village, and you had the one store here and the baker here, and it was very safe. I can't remember any crime that ever took place where I lived at that time. And the people that lived there, like our neighbors on both sides, one was 35 years and one was 52 years. And so it was a small community that was very nurturing with lots of kids. And that was exciting for me.
What was your address?
4128 Bryant
Okay, in Denver.
in Denver.
And where was
And
your
it-
mom a lunchroom manager?
At Columbian, right up the street.
Elementary
from
school?
where I lived. And then also Bryant Webster. And she loved Bryant Webster because most of the kids were very poor. And she enjoyed that because they were more appreciative at that time than she was at one school out east that she didn't like because they took it for granted. And she always wanted to help someone, but it was teachers that would bring children down and say they didn't have breakfasts. And although they didn't serve breakfast, she always had something for them.
Oh, sweet. Sounds like a really caring lady.
Mm-hmm.
What were their passions?
My mother's passion was raising her son George. I would say that was the most important thing. And then as they got older, camping, they had a camper, and that was incredible for them because it got them involved with 10 different families, and they would go camping all over and stay for a week at a time. My dad really, I think, looking back, he had two passions. The first was baseball, and that started extremely early in his life, and he played for about 25 years. And the highlight was in 1931 when he was able to pitch and be on a team in Denver for Babe Ruth. And that was incredible as he talked about it. And they played 3 games, and he pitched batting practice to Babe Ruth. And at the end of the 3 games, Babe Ruth came over and gave him 2 baseballs autographed, and I never got to see him until I was 16, and now I understand why. Jordy and Christy have seen him twice, so but they're 80-some years old now, and they look like new, and we don't keep them at home. We keep them in a safety deposit box, but they're to come from Babe Ruth, and he touched him, he gave him to my dad put him in baby blankets, and so they really haven't
Really
been,
babied the Babe Ruth balls.
yes, and they haven't been touched, and they're incredible, and that was his number one passion. And he would work during the day, and the coal and then the sand and gravel, but he was on 4 or 5 teams a week. Because baseball back then, that was the main thing you did in the summer, and everybody came out. And in Denver, there was, by the old Montgomery Wards, a Merchants Park, and that's where all the big games were before Denver Bears Stadium was built. And he got to play there a lot, and that's where he got to play with Babe Ruth. And that, what a highlight to be sitting there with the Babe and batting practice to him, and then he was the pitcher for Babe's team against the other teams.
That is really cool. And so they named you George. What's your middle name?
Thomas.
Thomas. And where did those names come from?
George Thomas. George Thomas comes from my grandfather. His name was George Thomas Betts. And
on your dad's side?
On my dad's side. And George was a farmer in Kansas. And it was very difficult. And in 1907, he put the family on the train and came out to Colorado. And can you imagine, 1907, and brought everyone out and built a house that we had to sell it about 6 years ago. But so the roots are very strong. And what he did, and if you can imagine, 16th Street Mall, he had horse and buggy, and he would go and get the vegetables from Sardella and Brancucci and like that, and would take him and go to the different restaurants, and that's where he sold them, and did that until they got into the coal and the trucking and all of that.
Cool. Sounds really cool. Now, they never had any other children?
No. My mom's an only child, my dad's an only child, and I'm an only child.
So is that their choice to have just one then?
Yes. Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. What did you enjoy as a child? Was it difficult growing up as an only child? Did you want siblings?
The thing I enjoyed most was freedom and living in a safe environment at that time. And the way I was raised, we couldn't do it with our children today. But leave the house after lunch and know that is dark, that's when to come home. And be at this house with this friend, be with this person. And my childhood was a lot of fun. I don't remember memories of childhood that were negative. And I'm very social. And so I got along with people, very well outside of school. And but at the same time, I wanted my friends to come over a lot. And I was the only kid that my mom knows about that asked for bunk beds for his birthday, because I wanted somebody else to come and stay there.
So instead of siblings, you just surround yourself with lots of friends?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And what activities did you and your friends like to do?
Baseball.
Baseball.
Football and, oh my goodness, marbles and tetherball. I was the tetherball king because I got my dad to build one in our backyard, and I practiced all the time. But it was always baseball, and baseball was something, it was just part of my soul.
What position is your favorite?
First base, and then I also pitched a little, and then outfield. But first base, a lot of the action is at first base, and I really like that. And I'm left-handed, so that was perfect.
As a child, who was the most influential person in your life?
Boy, I've wrestled with that question. I heard you give that to Donnie last time, and my answer a week ago would have been my mom. And the answer today would be my dad. That my mom was there, and she was very nurturing and loving, but in terms of doing things, making things, going places, coaching, it was my dad. But my dad was kind of like the silent person that just did the things. And my mom was more outgoing, more verbal, and she would plan a lot of activities where he would do something like coach and then build a house for us in the backyard. And one of my favorite things, he would bring the sand home from work if there was any left over. And it would be about that high in our backyard, and then it would start to settle, and then I could build tunnels and play with cowboys and Indians. And so it was just a lot of fun, different things that I was able to do. And then my dad's second passion was fishing. And almost every weekend in the summer we would go fishing and go different places. And I would fish a lot of the time, but a lot of the time I got to be Davy Crockett, and I got to roam the banks of the river and build forts, and I was free to be creative and imaginative, and wasn't boxed in by things. And the fishing was so important because it was social for my parents. And then we'd go on these trips where, we'd go to Glenwood Springs or Basalt or different places, and we didn't think of driving all that way before Eisenhower Tunnel, where we went over Loveland Pass. Yeah.
So that's your personal time outside of school. So talk about your school career in elementary school and junior high and high school.
Well,
where'd you go?
Very interesting. I went to Columbian Elementary in Denver, Skinner Junior High at the time, and then North High School. And my parents, both of them, went to Skinner and went to North High School. So you can see that tradition there. With school, if I liked you as a teacher, I did well. If you didn't respect us as a teacher, I acted out. So there were times that if I felt you were being cruel to me or someone else in the classroom, would I buy into what you were saying? No. And then I'd get to the point I'd get in trouble, because if the teacher said, do your homework, I would do it. And then the teacher would say, where is it? And I say, well, you didn't tell us to bring it in. And that caused me some problems. And socially, for elementary, I was the class clown and got a lot of attention, but not from the teacher. And my report cards, the grades weren't bad, but where they list, does listen to and follow directions and all those different things. Oh my goodness. I start every fall and they'd go down, and then by the spring I would bring them up. But conformity then and now isn't something that I buy into. And I want to change the world in my own way. And then the most important thing is that I've always had a love for people, especially kids. And that started when I was very, very young. And my mom tells me that she saw it just so early, and I wanted everybody to get a free ride. And that was a part of me, and is a part of me, and why I do the things that I do. And I have that ability to accept kids. It's easy to love the unlovables, but I love the unlovables and the lovables. And so that just makes it easier for the kids and easier for me.
I know growing up, church camp was also very important to you.
Oh. My mom came, when I was 13, came up to me and said, George, you need more friends. I said, I have enough. And she said, well, I saw this bulletin about a church camp down by Pueblo, and you're going. And I said, no, I'm not. She said, yes, you are. I said, no, I'm not. So I went. And after being there for 10 days, or for 10 minutes, it was for euphoria. And to be there for this church camp, and it was some church and some really neat activities, but a lot of social and a lot of different things that we got to be friends. and then that Christian element was a part of it. And I was able to go 5 years in a row, and just loved every minute. And I still have all the photos. I know all of the stories. And then I wanted to go to Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, which is a church-related university. And the reason is that the professors from Phillips were the counselors at the church camp. And so I met them, and I knew they were the ones I wanted to learn from. And so it was the only place I applied. But by then I knew, I was aware of my grades, and I didn't know whether they would let me in or not. And, my counselor wasn't real supportive and gave me doubts about whether I'd get in, but I got in and was somewhat successful.
Awesome. I know parts of the ALM came from your experiences with church camp. How did that impact the ALM?
Oh, the ALM, the Summer Enrichment Program, Senior Seminar, all the different programs came from that church camp, because it was the ideal environment, and there weren't cliques, there weren't people left out or harassing each other, and it started with the counselors. And there, it was the first time I was totally in an environment that we all belonged. And so that has stayed with me my entire life, and is the foundation for all my academic choices and careers and successes, but also for our family and for other people's families also. Because a church camp, the first time I felt totally accepted and totally whole.
Awesome. When you went to the university, what did you study?
Well, I was a really good freshman. In my first semester I had 5 majors. And it ended up history, because I respected my history teachers because they had been in Korea and they knew the world out there. And because of the GI Bill, they got to go back to school to get their degrees. And so they talked about history of the past, but the history that they had just lived, that was before Vietnam. And I really got hooked on history because my roommate, Arky, was from Arkansas, and we took a class called Civil War. And we put the 2 desks together in our room and had a map, a huge map. And of course, he was from the South, and so was a Southerner, and I was the Northerner. And to study, we would fight the different battles. And this would go on time after time after again. And that's how I got hooked. And it was a hands-on thing that helped us. And the 2 of us being history majors, it was the right thing. They never had a class in psychology down there. And I didn't learn that until I had taught for 2 years and took a social psychology class. And that's when I knew, this is the real content. And I applied at UNC for a master's in history and a master's in counseling. And the one in counseling, I got the letter of acceptance 2 days before I received the one in history. And that's made all the difference.
So if the mail had flipped your letters, it could have been a different story.
It could have been. It would, because I was going to go with, I loved them both, so I would have gone with each one or the other.
Where were you teaching history?
At VCon Middle School or Junior High. I had 8th and 9th graders, and the first day I walked in, I had a high group, they would call them at that time, a lot of gifted kids. And I came in, and the first class I ever taught was Communism versus Democracy. And I went in, took roll, went out, put on my costume, and came back in as Lennon. And just talked as Lennon for the hour. And they loved it. And then as the kids were walking out, one girl stayed behind and she said, "Mr. Betch, you seem like a nice teacher." And I said, "Well, thank you." And she said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I thought maybe she had missed something from my lecture. And she said, "Mr. Betts, my stepdad beat up my mom last night. What should I do?" I said, "I don't know. I never had a class on stepdads, but I'll know by noon. And I'll talk to the principal and the counselors and the teachers." And I knew by noon. And it was at that moment that I understood that that emotional self is as important as the cognitive, the intellectual. And if you're hurting, like she was, she didn't care about Lennon. She felt about safety and security and what to do for her mom. So I taught for 2 years, and then I applied for a master's in counseling up at University of Northern Colorado. And to get in, you needed a 3.2 grade point average. Well, mine from Phillips was a 2.3. Well, if you just take the two and kind of switch them, no problem. So I applied, got a letter to come up for an interview, and by then in my life, if I would have an interview, I would get in. And so I did. And then I met Sally Shaw and Judith Prawl, who were my major advisors. And I had had other teachers like me here and there, but these two were just incredible. And when you look at the teachers that make a difference, it was these two. And they had such faith in me. I excelled. I even bought the textbooks. I did everything I could to be successful. And it was in counseling. So I got to do what I loved most, and I got to learn these skills and have the total support of these two professors. And at the end of my master's, they called me in to talk, and I thought I was in trouble. And they said, "George, you're a natural." And I thought, "A natural? Okay, but a natural what?" And they said, "You're a natural counselor, and we want you to go on for your doctorate." Me? A doctorate? Okay. And with them, as my facilitators, my mentors, I went through that, and my feet never hit the ground once. It was what I was meant to do.
Which of the major psychologists out there would you say influenced your work the most?
Two of them. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. And we had a lot of classes on the two of them. And they came from the 50s and 60s. And they are still, to me, the foundation of everything we're doing today in schools. And we have new people that come up with positive psychology and this and that. And it's all Rogers. And it's all unconditional positive regard, and you have to start by accepting a person where that person is, not where you want that person to be. So those two were the ones, and their approaches were the ones that still impact me today. And every 2 or 3 years, I go back to read their books. Because it's still all there, and it's still very relevant.
So tell us about what happened after you got your doctorate. What was your thesis in, and where did that take you then?
Well, the whole master's and doctorate were in the counseling area, and I was looking for the dissertation for perceptions that people would have. Do we all react to the same stimuli? And the answer is no. And I had a slideshow that I'd show to people and then get their reactions, and learned that males react differently than females in ages and that type of thing. But during that period of time when I was getting my doctorate, the most amazing thing in my life happened. I was teaching an undergraduate course, and I walked into the classroom and I saw stars and I heard bells, and I looked over there, and sitting on the other side was Donnie Lawless. And I sat there and maybe even drooled a little bit. I just thought, oh my goodness. And then she started talking and interacting, and the rule was you couldn't date your students, but after they were out of your class, you could. So Donnie and I had a trip to San Francisco, and while we were there, we fell in love. And that was the beginning of an incredible life of now over 44 years. And it all started because, first of all, there was this group that were like the church group. There was this feeling, but then when I saw her, oh boy, I was just hooked. It was just no doubt about it.
That's awesome. And then what about your professional career? What happened after you got your dissertation?
Well, sometimes people think I'm the risk taker, but I'm not. Donnie is. And I just, after the doctorate, I wanted to go and settle down and get a small university or something and just, be there forever. Well, Donnie informed me after we were married that we're going to sell everything we own. We're going to have $5,000 a one-way ticket to Europe, and we're going to spend a year in Europe. And she had lived and traveled all over the world. And I had been in Oklahoma and Kansas and, 5 states altogether. So let's take George and put him in the middle of Paris when he's really not traveled at all. So we did on September 1st, 1972, and we arrived in Paris, and she's just elated, and I'm scared to death. And we finally found a job for me working at University of Maryland Overseas Program, and I taught usually 2 nights, and then we traveled the rest of the time, and we got to live in Germany and Spain and Belgium. And to have 1 year to be just the 2 of us with no responsibilities, it was incredible. Then we came back and we had run out of money, and so I applied for some jobs and didn't even get an interview because I had a doctorate. And people would think, well, if he has a doctorate, he must not be very good, because I wanted to teach in the high school. And then one of our friends, or 2 of our friends, Jim and Judy Temple, got me an interview. And I went in for the interview and walked out, and the principal said, well, do you want the job? And I said, yes. And I said, well, what would I be doing for sure? And he said, you're the expert, you figure it out. And I did, and out of that came senior seminar for all kids to be out of school and do creativity projects, and to find out about their passion areas and careers, and to go to the Grand Canyon or someplace on trips, and it was magical. And then as that went along, I was able to work with dropouts in a different program, and found out that dropouts many times have a lot of abilities, but they won't play the game. And they liked me and I liked them, and we started working together, and we worked with the kids that were successful. And then with Jolene Kircher, the math teacher, the 2 of us developed with the kids over a period of time the autonomous learner model, which is to help the kids to be self-directed and lifelong learners, to be autonomous. And also, one of the things that's exciting, it's a whole child approach. You don't just look at the intellectual, You look at the intellectual, the social, and the emotional, and the physical. So that total child is where the curriculum comes from. And I had the opportunity to develop the first high school program in gifted education in Colorado. And I knew it would be a big project. I was able to get Jolene Kircher, a math teacher, so that the two of us worked together, and that was so awesome because she had math and she had the students that were successful, and I had the social studies and those that weren't. And so putting the two together was exciting. There was only one time she insulted me because she said that because I was a poet, that when she first met me, she thought I was flaky. And I thought she was uptight, but we both got on that and worked extremely well with the kids and developed the autonomous learner model that is over 40 years old now and is in schools throughout the world. And the model comes from the kids. We did it with them rather than to them. And that makes a difference. And they had choices, and we all love choices. And we don't want everything to be prescribed. And the kids would flourish when they got to study law enforcement or becoming an elementary teacher or things like that. And that helped us to learn and to discover that given the opportunity, most kids will find and develop a passion. And passion learning is the highest level of learning. And that's what we seek to do in the autonomous learner model.
You and Jolene have very different approaches to getting things done, work styles, thinking styles. And for a lot of people, that would have been a conflict area. But you two seem to have made that really work and look at each other's strengths, and I can see both of your influences in the model. Do you want to address that?
Well, Jolene was a concrete sequential, and she wanted everything to be Roman numeral 1, 8B, 2, 8B, and I was more a abstract random. And so I would see it over here and see it over there, but I don't like abstract random as a term. I like random romantic. And she'd say, we would both try really hard to see each other's style. And she would say, no, let's not get carried away. Let's just come up with the first 2 weeks of the curriculum. What? Jolene, you design it, and then as we walk through the door to teach, I'll kind of go like this and change it. And she'd say, what? And there were kids that loved the sequential and those that loved the random, and we had everything for them. And we had all these different topics, and we really did let them develop the model and let them learn what it was that they needed to learn. But the styles were not in conflict. They enhanced the other style, because I'm not sure that either of us could have done the model without the other. And then it's interesting, I stayed at Arvada West 6 years and then went to UNC in charge of gifted education and the summer enrichment program. And then I traveled throughout the world consulting, setting up programs. And Jolene stayed 23 years at Arvada West High School. And when we would get back to revise the program, I had this set of experiences and knowledge, and she had this from that, and the two blended together. And it just enhanced everything. So it was never a problem.
Did you become more sequential, and did she become more random?
In terms of her being random, she would go like this: Roman numeral 1, A, B, and I would go A, B. But I am more sequential when I need to be. And that's the key. And I would say that both of us got to the point that we were holistic in thought and in action. And that's what you need, is both of those. And we both grew that way. You have that human nature of one of those, but you have to have what Grigori calls style flex, because you have to go in all the different areas.
It sounds like you were great influences on each other's career in education. Who else was a big influence for you in your educational career?
With Sally and Judy, and then the first 2 years, it was, I'm not, well, E. Paul Torrance is the main person that I was able to become friends with and work with some, and he was from Georgia and on creativity, and just treated me like a king. The other people, I admire them all, and look at their work and have this and that from their work. But the first year, I had Karen Kruger and Brian Larson and Ed Keppelman and different people, different kids that influenced me more than anybody. So it wasn't educators that influenced me, it was the kids we were working with and teaching. And Pablo Hazariga, he was in there too. And so it was so much kid orientated, and we learned from the kids. And you know, there are all these theories and all these wonderful things that people are doing, and I admire them. But what is missing is being with the kids. And if you're a professor and you've been in that Golden Dome for 30 years and you haven't walked in that classroom today, you don't know what's going on. And it's a lot different. I'm really thrilled now because I have two people in my life, Jordy and Kristen, that are teachers, and I learned about the classroom from them and how it's changed, and their creativity, how they're coming up with activities for kids for today is what Jolene and I did for years.
Speaking of Jordy, while your professional career was growing, so was your family.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about your wonderful additions to your family?
Yes, a daughter and a son, and our daughter's name is Christy. And Christy came out of the womb like this, you know. And Jordy came out of the womb like this. And throughout their lives, they've been like that. And Christy's always going for it. And Jordy is more laid back. Wonderful kids, beautiful kids. And you know, we go and we hear about all these problems that people have with their kids and this and that, and we never had that. And they didn't go through that different stages that they rebelled. There was nothing to rebel about, because yes, we had those parameters of no drugs and this and that, but in terms of making decisions and talking about things, it all came together. And one day that Donnie and I really saw this was Christy called us into her room and said, "Mom, Dad, you got to listen to this song." And the song was by Tom Petty. I had never heard of Tom Petty. And from that time forward until now, both of the kids will call us or send us their music. And that was just a stable factor. And then Christy's a mom and has three daughters, Ainsley, Lauren, and Haley Rose. And they're incredible. They're also very different. But one thing that they have in common is all three of them love Grammy and Silly Dad Pa. that's my name, Silly Dapa, because if you would say to him, well, your Dapa has a doctorate in this and does this and this. No, he's just silly. And that means I'm having fun with them. And they just, like Ainsley thinks Donnie's the best thing in the world. And so Ainsley and I agree, so we get along. And we have been able, in a very kind way, to give our children and our grandchildren opportunity for our passions, but also their own. And like from the time Ainsley was very little, Donnie read to her. And then they're still reading the Nancy Drew series, one chapter at a time, through all those different books. And it's a bonding experience. And Jordy is a teacher, and he's a PE teacher up in Evergreen. And last year, the parents became aware that Jordy was the only teacher that came to school every day and was never grumpy. And the kids, when Jordy was in elementary school, in kindergarten, I got to go and pick him up the last day of school. And Donnie said, "You're going to love this." And so I went and picked him up, got his little tray, and went over and gave it to the teacher. And the teacher, her name was Mrs. Wright. She was 9 months pregnant. And she had tears in her eyes. I thought, what is this? And she patted her little tummy and said, "Jordy, if I have a boy, I'm going to name him Jordy." And I thought no one would ever name their kid George. And Jordy, people just are attracted to him, and he's the same way. And we hear the same comments about Jordy that we heard, when he was 5 years old. And again, it's that unconditional positive regard. And both Christy and Jordy have that, but in unique ways. And Christy will find a group and then become totally involved in it. Jordy will develop a group. So it's a different style, but they are both really alike. And I think to parents that our children are mirrors to us. And Donnie and I have done a really awesome job because of the children we've raised. And then we look at what they're doing, what Christy and Jack are doing, and it's incredible and very similar. And yes, all three of the girls go to camp every summer.
Grammy camp?
Grammy camp's here, and then they have one in North Carolina. But if Donnie does Grammy camp, and if she didn't do that, and this will be the 4th year, if she didn't do that, there would be really sad 3 little girls. And it might be the pool in the backyard, or the chalk, or playing this or that, or just not big time activities, but it's Grammy camp. And when they get off the plane, they have last year's Grammy camp t-shirt, and they run up to Donnie and she gives them the new one.
Oh.
And that is, what a tradition.
That is awesome. What advice would you have to parents in general, and then parents that are struggling with their children? I mean, we've seen kids that have had wonderful upbringings but still choose other paths that are difficult. And what advice would you have?
Well, if a child has a problem, from my point of view, it might be a wonderful environment to an extent, but there are problems there. And usually there are problems that haven't been addressed. And that some kids will act out no matter what, but some, they have been controlled. And controlled to the point that they're not free to be themselves. And Donnie when she's talking to parents, she says the most important thing is to get out of their way, to let them be who they are. And I see so many parents that, you know, are helicopter parents. And like with you guys, you let your girls choose. You did a smorgasbord, and then they got to choose because you trusted in them. And I think parenting, a lot of it is a journey that all four of us are taking together. And when it's seen like that, it's different than, we don't say we're going fishing on Saturday. We brainstorm what are some things we could do, and we do some of the things that we want to do, but also that they want to do. So there's buy-in. One of the best stories was we decided on Sundays to have family meetings. And this was Christy's idea, that we need family meetings. So in the evening, the four of us got there, and all of a sudden you could tell Christy was in charge, and she had her clipboard, and she had her notes and her agenda. And we all sat there, and she said, okay, agenda item number 1, Jordy's rules. She wanted to change his because he was getting to do things younger than she got to do. And we said, well, I'm not sure about that. But that all started because of Christy and continued for a long time.
That's great. You have to help but laugh. I can totally see that.
I saw you laugh. That's
I know.
good.
So cute. What a great idea. How does ALM fit within a parenting model?
The autonomous learner model, if you want the child to respect others, if you want the child to respect self, if you want the child to learn to interact effectively with other children, if you want the child to develop their potential in terms of skills and attitudes, and then move into passions, and then in-depth learning, that's what the AOM is, and that's a lot of what we want our kids to do as parents. And so it's very parallel. And a lot of the parents will say, well, it was good for my kids, but it was better for me, because I learned how to grow myself. It isn't just the growth of my child, but when we see this model, it helps me to grow also, not only as a teacher, but as a person.
I really feel like it is a life model. It's not just an
Yes.
education model.
Right.
It's a good guide to your life.
And before we saw it as a learning model, and now going through the third modification, we see it as a model for learning and living. Gifted kids are only gifted 8 hours a day, 185 days a year. They're gifted all the time. And so this applies to them throughout their lives.
I think education has significantly evolved since the ALM was first developed, and in the 70s there was more time for creativity and thinking skills, and now we're very focused on very specific academic math skills, and the curriculum is now very lockstep, and teachers are being evaluated on if they follow that curriculum, as well as state testing, and there's a lot more demands that way on teachers to not have time for some of those ALM type activities. How do you think today's teacher could incorporate ALM into this very structured, strict, controlled curricular environment that is happening now?
Well, first of all, there's one book I would have them read, and it was a book that I read during my doctorate, and then when Jordy was becoming a teacher, he had to read it in one of his classes, and it's called Teaching is a Subversive Activity. And there are sometimes, for just maybe even a few minutes, you have to shut that door and do what you know is best. and it's a risk, but it's a risk not to. And I think it's starting to change a little bit. I know that project-based learning has had an impact, autonomous learner, enrichment triad. Different models are not only in gifted ed, but they're spreading out. But it is now, it has been, and it'll always be an uphill battle. That we value the curriculum more than we value the child.
There's a big difference between teaching fourth grade and teaching fourth graders.
Yes, absolutely.
It seems to me a lot of the ALM can be infused through the regular curriculum also. So if you're prescribed to teach a certain curriculum, you could teach it ALM style.
Last night, Jordy and Kristen were explaining to us what they're doing in their classrooms, and I just sat there and kind of chuckled because it was all ALM. And they were taking a standard and approaching it in a creative manner. And one of the things Jordy does that is incredible, his school goes through 8th grade. So in 8th grade, he teaches PE. So in 8th grade, they have to choose their favorite sport and research it even more, and then teach it to all the other kids in the classroom. And they make a videotape of it all and then share it with the rest of the school. And each child is choosing a different thing that is important to them. And some are just getting into that, and some have been in it for a while. But it makes them think of something that is meaningful to them, and then that you can do it in a very creative manner.
And a lifelong manner.
And a lifelong
So
manner.
even
Yes.
physical education can be ALM.
Oh, yes.
Who is your biggest fan?
Donnie. Without a doubt.
And how has she supported you these years?
I think one of the major things we try to do is support each other. And when one of us is going through things or hurting, the other one is there. And the most recent was 9 months ago. I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and had to have the operations, the chemo and the whole thing. And she was there for every minute, every step of the way. And she also kept me from the truth in terms of she studied pancreatic cancer on and on and on, and I didn't. And she shielded me from what could possibly happen. Because I think if I would have known how scary it is, and if I would have known that your chances aren't very good, I might have given up. But she kept that inside and just was strong for me, the whole thing. And then about 3 weeks ago, I had the PET scan, which said that at this point I'm cancer-free. And that's because of Donnie. And then second thing is, you know, we talk about giftedness, and at University of Colorado Medical Center, I saw giftedness in action through Dr. Edel. And Dr. Edel does pancreatic cancer surgery. And he developed a technique at Johns Hopkins, and now it's only done in 3 places, Hopkins, the Mayo, and here. And they'll look at patients and look at all this information and decide who's a good candidate. And I was able to do that. And then when I was coming out of the surgery, and it was 7 hours, maybe a little more, when I was coming out, he took the time to come over to me and said just a few words. but they were life-changing. And he said, I got it all. I got it all. That was such a motivator, and I had the best. I don't think there's anyone in the world that does it like Dr. Edel. But what I also understood as I was staying in the hospital, that Dr. Edel has the best with him. He doesn't have any nurse or other surgeon or other doctor that, he has the best working with him. And giftedness attracts giftedness. Not in, at that time, it wasn't his potential, it was what he actually could do. And I say right now, you know, I'm in the beginning of my second life. And one of the things I've learned is some of the things that would bother me in the past, you know, don't at this time. And then the ongoing journey with Donnie. And another thing, we had to cancel a trip to Europe last summer because of cancer. So we were looking at, well, we'll go again this summer. And I was thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. We could go in August or September, you know, those months. And then I told Donnie that, and we're going in May.
I'd like to know, what is your definition of happiness?
Number one is health. You've got to have that health and work on it. And I was blessed that we found the cancer early, and that I now have a second chance. But for all of us, the health enhances everything else. And happiness is going to Estes Park with Donnie to a restaurant she just really dislikes called Bob and Tony's Pizza. And we went there last week, don't you know? And to go there and just the two of us and go up, there's a little walk, little hike above Estes where you can see all the mountains. That's happiness. Seeing three girls get off of a plane and take off running to come up to hug us, that's happiness. To watch Jordy as he's coaching basketball or soccer, and to watch him with the girls and how they interact, and the respect that they all have for him, that's happiness. It's something that it's an appreciation not only for yourself but for others, and not big time accomplishments, but just those things that are meaningful. And then for my academic career, I have been blessed there too, because no one ever told me I couldn't do it, so I've done it. And that is develop the autonomous learner model, and now I have the distinct privilege of being the president of the National Association for Gifted Children. And I have a task force this year, and that task force is called the Whole Gifted Child. And it's looking in and out of school, before school, with parents, with teachers, the whole thing, but looking at all components of the children and then trying to define what is a whole gifted child rather than components. And I have a lot of people in different areas on the task force, and out of that will come presentations, books, white papers, different things, and I get to do that, and it will have an impact.
What is your big dream for NAGC 5-10 years from now?
I would say for NAGC to continue the things that are working now, and then for people like myself to have the intelligence and the wisdom to move out of the way when the next generation comes. Because there are new ideas out there, and when I started we had to fight, and I want to have open arms and see where they take us in what areas. And if I was one of the main leaders in 10 years, that would be horrible, because there are new people that are coming along that are and will be incredible. And then the next thing for NEGC is that we do more for teachers and for parents, and that we take the research, and there's some real good research, but look to see if it works and have follow-up studies and things like that. NEGC is now to the point that with 16 different networks, you can choose 16 different directions as a member that you want to go. And that to me is very exciting.
That's awesome. What advice would you give 20-year-old George Betts?
Oh, I've thought of this, and I decided first to answer it, what advice would I give 85-year-old George Betts? And the answer to that is eat your vegetables, take your medicine, do your exercise, and don't lose that passion for life. When I look at the 20-year-old George Betts, I don't have any advice for him, because, you know, he failed at times, but he achieved at times, and he just, George Betts at 20, he was just going for it and trying different things, and again, the relationships, and I wouldn't want him to do it any different.
Looking back over your journey so far, what would you consider to be your greatest achievement?
Our marriage.
You and Donnie have a very special, unique marriage, I think, and I think most people aren't so lucky. I think they stay married but aren't as working as one unit as it seems to me that you all are. What is your secret to success?
Well, it begins with unconditional positive love, not regard, but love. And both of us are totally aware of each other and our emotions. And Donnie will walk in the room and I'll say, "What's wrong?" And I know immediately. And same her for me. And then also another thing is that from time to time I just screw up and, you know, just say the wrong thing or don't do the right thing, and I have that ability to think about it, work through, and say I'm sorry. That's a big one. That's a big one.
Donnie, I feel, has walked the professional walk with you too. I don't know that you would have accomplished all that you have without her by your side. Do you want to talk about how she has impacted your professional career?
Well, we both, you know, have masters in counseling, and so most of everything that we've done together. And like at Arvada West, she was as much a teacher there as I was. And then with Alps Publishing and the conference that she ran for 25 years, and the support for Alps and for all, you know, to have a conference and have 150 people come and meet their needs, even though you're an introvert, and you have to suck it up and meet their needs. It's just, she's incredible that way, and we've always been able to put the two together. We did 25 conferences up in Estes Park, week long, and at the 24th one, the next to last night, I walked in the room and she was on the bed and she was crying. And so, of course, being aware, I said, "What's wrong?" You know, wasn't hard to figure out. And she said, "Next year is the last conference." And I said, "Okay." And respecting each other that way. And so the next night at the Friendship Circle, we announced this is one more year. And it had to be that way. And then at UNC, University of Northern Colorado, I had an incredible career. But I knew when it was time to leave. Just like John Elway didn't go for a three-peat, he knew after two, this is it, you know. And so, same with that Peyton guy, Peyton Manning. But it's the trust, it's the love, it's the kindness.
Yeah, and Donnie, I think, was the face of Alps. You know, she was the first
yes.
person people saw, and it was fun to watch her at the desk greeting people, and it was like a family reunion more than a educational conference, and I think that had a lot to do with the face of Alps with Donnie, yeah.
And then one of the neatest things, it's the only conference I've ever seen that by the end of the conference, the kids are the middle of the conference.
Mm-hmm. Everyone was included, if they were
Yeah.
1 month old or much older than 1 month. What motivates you? What inspires you?
The love of people. The opportunity to live in a better world and help make a better world.
What goals are you still working toward?
I'm not the type to have goals or a bucket list or things like that, and I don't set goals. Goals find me, and it's like Donnie and I both believe we're in the right place at the right time, and that's when the goal develops. And the first book of poetry I ever wrote, things weren't going well, and we weren't selling them, and we went to San Francisco and saw a book that was similar and saw that it was published there. And so we said, well, we'll go see the publisher. Well, you don't just do that. But we did, and knocked on the door, and this funny little guy came out and said, "Can I help you?" And we thought it was a janitor. And it was Hal Kramer, the owner. And next day he called and said, "I'm going to publish your books." And he published 10 of our books for us. And so the goal really found us. Not many people would walk into a company and do that, but we did it because it was the thing to do. So it's not that I set out with this goal, it's that the goal helps create, the goal develops as we develop.
When people look back at your life, how do you want to be remembered?
Well, with a select group as Silly Dapaw, as incredible loving husband, as a very compassionate, caring educator. Those are the main things.
Well, what is
Oh,
really
one thing I gotta mention. With NEGC, it's getting to the point when people die, they'll have a ceremony or a memorial, and then they'll have a session, and, and they'll have this and that. And all I want is a poster session with sticky notes, and I don't need that, all those things.
I like that. So I'd like you to create one of your own questions and answer it.
What has been constant through my entire life? And I would say that the love of people, and there's always a new door, there's always another mountain, there's always something to do to create, and those two go along, they're parallel together, and that's what I've been able to live at. I was the founder and director of the Summer Enrichment Program at University of Northern Colorado for 35 years. And we served 14,000 kids. And most of them walked away with what we call the glow. And the glow happens when you're at SEP, and it's this feeling that comes over you that I'm okay, I can do this, I like other people. And once the glow is in you, it doesn't leave. And I have people 35, 40 years old that write to me or see me at a ball game and say, I still have the glow. And the glow is everything. It represents everything that is good about human nature.
I do feel like once people have that opportunity to work with you, that they are forever changed. And one question I had on my list was, what is your superpower? But I think your superpower is helping people find that glow within themselves, and shining that light and putting the mirror up and letting them see their own glow.
Exactly.
And that's a pretty unique gift.
It is.
When I talk to people that have known you back from high school, we get teary. We were all impacted by knowing Donnie, and we were all impacted by knowing you. And I think you helped us feel okay about ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's a pretty rare gift that you both have with people.
Yes, it is. It's one that we both cherish, and we wouldn't be the people we are today without it. But it's so incredible to see someone that maybe is hurting, that you can help them to feel better and find a journey, and not find a journey, have them find their journey, and to support them in that journey. And again, it feels so good to be accepted by another person. And then above that, it feels so good when we are listened to. And that's part of what Donnie and I are able to do. And that's the foundation to give others growth.
I love that. That's totally right on. In the ALM book, you have the I Am poem.
Mm-hmm.
Can you write an I Am poem for us now about yourself?
I don't remember all the parts of it, but I'm loving and caring. I wish more people could see the beauty of others. I strive to be the best person I can. I'm aware that there are awful things in life. I know that my life will impact the world in some way, positively. I am a person who is loving and giving. I am the person I want to be.
That was awesome. Are there any other thoughts you want to share with us?
Well, I know this will be seen by a lot of people and will be seen 6 months from now or a year or whatever. The beauty of doing this is that, and the one you did with Donnie, is it captures who we are at this moment. And even though we'll change and, things will always keep changing, this represents us at this time, and what a gift you and Brian have given us to do this. And I can see Ainsley and Lauren and Haley Rose watching this when they're 40 and just cracking up at different parts of it, and just it captures for them not only who we'll be later in life, but who we are now.
And their children, and their children.
And their children, right?
It is a lifelong gift. Well, you have both given us a tremendous gift, and we appreciate all you have done. And thank you for letting us interview you today.
This has been exciting, and I know Donnie feels the same way. And the two of us are blessed to have Karen and Brian, the two of you, as wonderful good friends.